Did you know that Jesus gave believers two major responsibilities before his return? To watch and be ready, and to serve faithfully and wisely. In Gospel of Matthew 24 verse 30 to up to 25 verse 30, the Lord shifts his message. Earlier in the chapter, he was speaking about events related to Israel and the tribulation, but starting in verse 32, the focus turns directly to the church and believers. And the Lord presents four powerful pictures: the fig tree, the days of Noah, the 10 virgins, the parable of the talents. Together they reveal how believers should live while waiting for Christ's return. Jesus begins with a simple but powerful illustration. In Gospel of Matthew 24 verse 32, he says, "Learn the parable from the fig tree. When its branch becomes tender and puts forth leaves, you know that summer is near." In the Bible, the fig tree symbolizes the nation of Israel. Earlier in Matthew 21, Jesus cursed a barren fig tree, symbolizing Israel's spiritual condition. But here in Matthew 24, the fig tree comes back to life. Its branches become tender, its leaves appear. This indicates that Israel would one day be restored as a nation. Historically, Israel was scattered for nearly 2,000 years. But in 1948, the nation of Israel was re-established. Many Bible students see this as the fig tree beginning to put forth leaves again. Jesus said that, when believers see these things happening, they should understand something important: summer is near. In prophetic language, summer represents the coming kingdom age, the time when Christ will return and establish his rule on earth. So, the restoration of Israel becomes a sign to believers that we are approaching the end of the age. Jesus continues in Gospel of Matthew 24 verse 34, "Truly I say to you, this generation shall by no means pass away until all these things take place." This verse has puzzled many readers. But the word generation here does not simply refer to people of a certain age. Instead, it refers to a moral generation, a world system characterized by rebellion and unbelief. From the time Jesus spoke these words until today, the moral condition of humanity has remained largely the same. But the Lord promises something remarkable. This rebellious generation will continue until Israel is fully restored and the kingdom comes. Only then will the world truly change. When Christ returns, the moral condition of humanity will finally shift from evil to righteousness. After describing the signs, Jesus gives a serious warning. He says believers must watch and be ready. In Gospel of Matthew 24 verse 42, he says, "Watch therefore, for you do not know on what day your Lord comes." And in verse 44, "Be ready, because the Son of Man is coming at an hour you do not expect." The Lord compares his coming to the days of Noah. People were eating, drinking, marrying, and living normal lives. But suddenly, the flood came. In the same way, many people today live without thinking about Christ's return. But Jesus warns believers to remain spiritually alert. Why? Because watchfulness is related to readiness for his coming. The Lord's return will not be announced beforehand. It will come suddenly. Those who are watching will be prepared. In chapter 25, Jesus tells the parable of the 10 virgins. 5 were wise, 5 were foolish. All of them were waiting for the bridegroom. But only the wise virgins brought extra oil for their lamps. When the bridegroom arrived at midnight, the foolish virgins were unprepared. Their lamps were going out, they had no oil, the door was shut, and they missed the feast. In this parable, the virgins represent believers, the oil represents the spirit and spiritual life, the bridegroom represents Christ. The lesson is clear. Believers must maintain a living, spiritual relationship with the Lord. Being saved is not the same as being spiritually prepared. The wise believers are those who remain filled with life and ready for Christ's return. Finally, Jesus tells the parable of the talents. A master gives his servants different amounts of money before leaving on a journey. One receives 5 talents, another receives 2, another receives 1. When the master returns, he asks them to give an account. The servants who use their talents faithfully are rewarded, but the servant who buried his talent is rebuked. This parable teaches that believers must be faithful and prudent in serving the Lord. God has entrusted every believer with gifts, opportunities, and responsibilities. When Christ returns, He will evaluate how we use them. Faithfulness brings reward, neglect brings loss. Matthew 24 and 25 give believers a powerful message. Jesus is coming again. And until He returns, the church must live in two ways: watchful and ready, always expecting His coming, faithful and prudent, serving Him diligently with what He has entrusted to us. Watchfulness prepares us for rapture. Faithfulness prepares us for reward. This message is based on spiritual materials found at lsm.org. So the question is, if Christ returned today, would we be ready?